Now we've got the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Thanks so much for coming back on.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Now, you've just delivered a major budget address outlining the top priorities for the state of Pennsylvania. But at the top, I want to get your thoughts on one national story here. So we've watched for basically my entire adult life as Republicans have fearmongered about the border, demanding legislation. Then the Democrats agreed and negotiated what is the most conservative border deal that they could have negotiated. And then the Republicans, having seen that, opted to balk. So can you speak on the idea of the Republicans preserving issues because they would rather run on them ahead of the election than actually solving them?
Yeah, it's absolutely shameful. I think if you ask anybody, Democrat and Republican alike, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need a pathway to citizenship. We need to make sure our dreamers are protected. And we need a secure border. And we have to do all of this in a thoughtful, humane way. Now, I'm not familiar with all the ins and outs of the bill, but what seemed obvious to me was that it had some kind of bipartisan support in Congress until Donald Trump decided to do what he always does, which is put himself first instead of the country and create more chaos for us. I mean, this really is indicative of how he goes about his daily grind, which is, let me figure out what's best for Donald Trump and screw everybody else in the process. And what is really scary, which should scare the hell out of most people, is that he's now got this legion of followers who are quite willing to vote against their own interests in support of him and creating more chaos in our country. And to take a serious issue like immigration reform, which we need, which, let's be real, Democrats and Republicans alike have failed to get done over a lot of years. And the fact that we were at the 1 yard line and then they wouldn't run the ball in because Donald Trump said no, tells you all you need to know about the modern day National Republican Party. It is scary. What we don't need is more chaos in our country. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is bringing.
And this is a pattern, by the way. I mean, just a few days earlier than that, he also came out and said that he hopes the economy crashes before he takes office. So he constantly wants to see all of the priorities, the professed priorities of his own party fail because he thinks it would redound to his benefit, electorally speaking.
Yeah, and let me give you a concrete example from Pennsylvania. He claims to be this great voice of the middle class. I think his words, not mine, that he's their champion. One of the first things he says he wants to do, and look, for all of his BS, what we've learned is you got to take him at his word because he actually does try to do the things that he says he's going to do. The first thing he wants to do is get rid of Obamacare. That would mean that 1.2 million Pennsylvanians, primarily middle-class Pennsylvanians, would be thrown off healthcare coverage. Think about the chaos that would bring to their families. But you see, he wants the political issue for himself. He wants to inject more chaos into the conversation. And so screw all the people that get in his way. That is what he does every single day. It's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, though, he did promise a great healthcare plan. I think it was 2 weeks. I think we'll get it in about 2 weeks from now. Okay, so let's move over to Let's move over to Pennsylvania here. There were two major progressive priorities outlined in your budget address. You've called for raising the minimum wage and also legalizing marijuana, among other priorities that you outlined. What's the likelihood, given the legislature's makeup, that they would be receptive?
Well, let me talk about each. I think on minimum wage, you have to understand we're still at $7.25 an hour. 30 states have changed their minimum wage or upped their minimum wage. While we have stayed static. Every single state around us in Pennsylvania has raised their minimum wage. We have people leaving Pennsylvania to go work in Maryland or New York, just to name two examples, because they can make a higher wage, making our workforce challenges even greater. The bottom line is this is the time for us to be competitive, to do the right thing, and to raise the minimum wage in the Commonwealth. I think the prospects are much better today than they were a couple years ago. The House of Representatives passed a bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which is what I support. And the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans, have given some signals that they're open to a change here. This is one of the areas where I'm going to try and find bipartisan consensus. I think you know this. I'm the only governor in the entire nation with a divided legislature. I've got one chamber led by Democrats, one led by Republicans. So we've constantly got to find areas of compromise, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. On marijuana, I'll let you know this is something I've had to really evolve on. I've grown on this issue. Years ago, I was against legalization, and I sort of viewed it through dual prisms. One, as a dad. I'm the father of 4 children. And 2, as the former chief law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth. I was the attorney general. And I worried about it from both perspectives. But as I studied the issue, as I learned more, as I tried to stop listening to the noise and look at the actual data, what became very clear to me is that we need to use law enforcement resources for the things that actually matter, that are going to keep people safe. We've got a history here where the criminalization of marijuana has negatively impacted certain communities, particularly communities of color, and we needed to right that wrong. And in states that have legalized, if you regulate it effectively, you can keep it out of the hands of kids and others who shouldn't have it, and then do away with the black market, which is far more difficult to sort of monitor when it comes to keeping it away from kids. And if we tax it responsibly, and we can be more competitive. This is another area where our neighbors around Pennsylvania, Ohio being the most recent, have legalized. I think we should be next, and that's why I pushed for it in my budget. I just wanted to share with you and your viewers and listeners, this wasn't something that, I've sort of always been there on. I want to be very honest. This is something I've evolved on, I've changed on, and I'm glad I did, because I think we're in the right place.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's worth noting, too, that I don't know that the left necessarily has a monopoly on marijuana legalization. To your point, recreational marijuana use was approved in states like Ohio and also Missouri and Montana. So these aren't exactly liberal bastions here.
No, it's not a partisan issue. I mean, Ohio, again, I'm focusing kind of on our neighbors, right? So I've got Maryland, New York, New Jersey legalized. Ohio went a different path. They actually had a referendum, and 57% of their voting public voted to legalize. And so that tells you not just where the politicians are, but that tells you where the public is there.
Yeah. Now, while Republican states are passing laws to strip women of reproductive health care, you've called for Pennsylvania to actually invest in it. Can you go over some of the changes that you would like to see on that front?
Look, let me just say, for a long time, about 30 years, here in Pennsylvania, we funded something called crisis pregnancy centers, it was called Real Alternatives. This is one of those places that tried to trick women into not understanding their full range of reproductive rights. This is something I feel very, very strongly about, that women deserve the right to make decisions over their own bodies. They deserve a full range of reproductive health care. As governor, in my first year, after 3 decades of this, I ended funding for crisis pregnancy centers. And now we're making sure that a full range of reproductive health care options are available to women across Pennsylvania. I'm always going to trust women to make decisions over their own bodies. We're now trying to go steps further to deal with women's health in general and the health of girls. My wife, Lori, our first lady, has spent a lot of time talking to young girls and girls and young women across Pennsylvania. One of the things they talked to her about was the lack of period products in their schools or in their rec centers or other areas where they go. Girls and young women explaining to her that they might have to miss a day of school or leave early because they got their period and there was nothing available for them. And so I called for $3 million in funding for feminine hygiene products to be directly distributed in our schools. It's something I think is critically important to protect the interests of young women and girls. And I couldn't be more proud of Lori, my wife, our first lady, for taking such a leadership role here.
As we head toward this November, do you still believe that reproductive rights and abortion are as potent an issue in Pennsylvania as that issue has been since Dobbs was handed down?
I think freedom's always an important issue, and I think reproductive freedom is chief among them, along with being able to marry the person that you love, have your kids read the books that you want, not that some politician decided for them, and then, of course, have your vote be counted for the person that you cast your ballot for. All of our freedoms are at risk if Donald Trump is returned to the White House, and these are going to be central issues, I know, on voters' minds, including reproductive freedom.
Well, now, there is also a mental health crisis happening among young Americans. You've called for that issue to be confronted as well. Can you speak on that?
I think it is critically important that we recognize what goes on between your ears is just as important as what goes on throughout your whole body. And we're trying to eliminate the stigma here in Pennsylvania by speaking openly about mental health issues and then actually funding tangible things that help folks, from our 988 crisis hotline to more funding for adult mental health. But the thing that I have focused so much attention on is getting mental health counselors and resources and online services available to students in their schools so that they can have this help that they need. In my first budget that I passed with bipartisan support, we created the first ever $100 million line item in our schools for mental health. I'm trying to double down on that now in my next budget, and hopefully we'll again be able to get bipartisan support in that area.
And this would be a good opportunity, too, for all those Republicans who do gun apologia by blaming mental health for everything, to give them the opportunity to actually walk the walk and allocate funding to mental health.
Yeah, look, I mean, there is no question we need to do more on mental health. We need to both eliminate the stigma and fund real resources. I've been focused my comments to you today on children, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done for adults as well. And this is a wise investment here in Pennsylvania. We're making it. We're going to continue to.
I also saw that Pennsylvanians making up to the median income will pay no more than $1,000 in tuition and fees per semester for college, which would have been wonderful when I went to Lehigh, because tuition was not $1,000 at Lehigh.
It was not. But look, I really believe in that we got to create the opportunity economy here in Pennsylvania, which means starting off with a great K-12 education and then being in a position where you can choose your path to success and opportunity. You want to go in the workforce, then we're going to fund more apprentices and get you out into union halls and get you out into the workforce there. There's real value and respect in that work. You want to be a welder? Great. We want to help you be a welder. If you want to choose the path of going to college, we need to make that more affordable. We are 49th in the nation in higher education investment here in Pennsylvania, and it's holding us back. And so one of the things we need to do is both reform our higher ed system and invest in it. And by investing in it, that's going to allow tuition to be held down. So I made a commitment that if you pass my budget, we will be able to say to every family median income or below, or student median income or below, you will not have to pay more than $1,000 a semester in order to attend a state college or university. This is an important time to invest in higher ed and all kinds of pathways to success and opportunity. And that's what I'm trying to do here as governor of Pennsylvania.
Now, either among the stuff we just spoke about or something that we didn't cover, was there any one priority that's especially important for you to see pass?
Look, I just think creating a sense of hope and opportunity here in Pennsylvania. For too long, Republicans who've dominated this building have held us back by failing to make the kind of commitments we need on education, on workforce development, on public safety, on healthcare options. And now we're in a position where we can make those investments. We've got a $14 billion surplus. I want to invest some of that, still maintain a surplus, but invest some of that in the good people of Pennsylvania, create an opportunity economy, lift up communities that have historically been shut out and left behind. I believe we can do that together here. I got my work cut out for me, of course, because I'm the only governor in the nation with a divided legislature, but we're going to be able to work together to get it done. I'm confident of that.
And finally, let's finish off with this. I mean, just going by the priorities that you laid out and that your party is advocating for, can you kind of talk about the difference both at PA, at the PA level and also the national level in terms of what Democrats are advocating for when they're in power versus what Republicans are pushing for, evidenced by even what they're doing from the minority in the national level?
Well, maybe I can answer that question by going back to your first question. I believe Democrats are the party of getting shit done, which is my motto here as governor of Pennsylvania. We live by 3 letters, GSD. We try and put points on the board every day, whether it's on infrastructure, education, economic opportunity. I think the other side, led by Donald Trump, is the party of chaos that doesn't want to get anything done. Back to your first question. When we were on the 1 yard line and had the opportunity to do something meaningful on immigration reform, again, not familiar with all the details here or there, but it was clear that there was bipartisan support to get that done. 1 yard line to get that done after more than a decade of trying. They said no, because they're the party of not getting stuff done. The reality is what people want more than they want, to agree with you on 100% of the issues. They just want to know you're working your butt off for them. That's what I'm trying to do in Pennsylvania. Clear contrast with what Donald Trump is trying to do across this country.
We'll leave it there. Perfectly put. Governor Shapiro, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks. Go check on that Chihuahua.